Welcome to one of our educational episodes. As a fast follow to what we were doing on the weekly, I figured this one is worth having its own episode. Too much to digest. Some of this hadn't even existed yet, but I figured let me just combine them together because one has to do with motivation, one has to do with the spirit of why Leicester, found at cryptotalkradio.net, does not do Twitter Spaces, does not do Telescam, and largely try to create his own community to get away from garbage like this. This all tied together. It was nicely wrapped in a bow. I couldn't have asked for anything that rhymes. So here, educationally, this is what I'm motivated. I'm motivated to try to help people because it's clear that there's a lot of unfortunate truth behind some of the stuff came out and some stuff that's garbage and doesn't matter. In order to help delineate the two, I need to make sure you understand confirmation bias because unfortunately, there's a lot of that spinning around social media of all forms. Confirmation bias's core definition is already up on the screen. Let me simplify this down for some of you that don't know. Confirmation bias is where you have a belief formed from something, it doesn't matter what the something is, where you actively seek out stuff to validate your opinion. That is confirmation bias. If you are ignoring other data points that contradict what you believe, that is confirmation bias. Let me see if I can put it in a little bit clearer perspective because I suspect there's at least one person who will resonate with the truth around some of this garbage, right? When you have a form of confirmation bias also ties to current projects that you are dealing with, and those projects have obvious flags around them. And people call to attention obvious data points that are necessarily going to contradict your belief about said project. Of course, the screen I'm showing you now should resonate with some of you as a perfect example of confirmation bias, because if you see that CERDIC kicks said project off of a thing because of the reputation of the person in charge who I refer to as the car salesman, and your response is, well, Brian, explain that to AMA. It means that you are blindly following and listening what, in this case, car salesman has told you in total disregard to the other information that is out there. That, my friends, is a form of confirmation bias. It's also a form of Stockholm syndrome because you are ultimately blindly following what you are told because it conforms with your belief. Now that we have level set with a real world example of what this business means, confirmation bias is a very dangerous thing. And unfortunately, with SAITAMA, we are seeing inklings across social media of confirmation bias. In order for you to understand this and why it's so dangerous, I must summarize it. And again, I don't go to Telescam and I don't go to Twitter Spaces. This was summarized to me on multiple fronts because unfortunately, a certain subset of influencers, quote unquote, all jumped on this as a late breaking story. And I'm going to probably piss some people off, and that's fine. But at the same time, because as I said, they don't give a damn about me. I can say whatever I want to say, and they're probably not going to have any smoke on it. So, number one, I have said in my quarterlies, I believe the problem with SAITAMA is the cult leader, as I refer to him, Russell Armand. I refer to him as a cult leader because everything has been a failure. They have not delivered anything of any substance to date. They have failed at the things they talked about. There was the failed November 13th event, and ultimately it's when he talks, the thing crashes. There also has been a lot of smoke around the guy, and he ducks that smoke in terms of going on neutral platforms to answer key questions about things that are happening. All of this is kind of a given. There's no ambiguity behind any of this stuff. Here's where it started to be a problem with this guy. He and his wife, or I guess currently to be ex-wife, point is at the time wife, right? At the time, there was all this smoke around both of them. And the theory was that they both might have been running game, as the kids say, taking people's money and using your assets to enrich their own lives. In fact, there was all sorts of stuff happening from her that led people to think that they were dumping off the project to deal with all this stuff. Russell Arman, aka cult leader, came out and said, no, this is stuff that I had prior to me getting involved with the project. I was already enriched. Fast forward a little bit now. All of a sudden, there's this urgent thing coming from a person who is deemed an influencer, quote unquote, who for whatever reason people like to talk to. And they have this whole, I can only describe it as a subcult. They have this whole collection of people. You may hear some of the names, Kel Bell, right? You may hear some of these names. They all congregate together in their quest to, quote unquote, expose SAITAMA as potentially a scam. If you go back to my previous quarterly about SAITAMA, I said that is it likely a scam? No, because when they went to V2, the liquidity unlocked and they could have easily taken it. And as far as the data, they didn't. However, they screwed up the airdrops and we don't know what happened. People identified that there were cells happening that they confirmed came from the dev team. What does this likely tell us with no affirmation, but likely tells us? Likely tells us that they were dumping off the project, as in selling tokens that they had in wallets in order to do something with it. I want to clarify for people, if they owned the tokens and they sold the tokens, even if it dumped off the project, and they did not take directly from the liquidity pool, they didn't do anything, quote, wrong. Because if they own the tokens, and again, as devs, administrators, managers, whatever of the project, they are entitled to have tokens. They are entitled to sell tokens. All of this is normal and natural. People don't like it because it harms other investors. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying there's nothing, quote, wrong with them doing that if it came from token sales. So then people are noticing that she, as in Christina, keeps coming out and talking about all this great stuff that's happening in their lives. And I distinctly remember the one that talked about land that she apparently had just acquired. And the message around this when it went to Twitter was, yes, we just bought this land. And I said at the time, this is very tone deaf because you got people whose investment is at an all-time low. I remember during the whole fiasco, they were on AMAs talking about, yeah, we're down too, but this tells me that perhaps they had tokens themselves that they were selling off for this purpose. If they had major bags, as in they are themselves or were themselves the whales selling off the project, there's nothing, quote, wrong with it, although it's possibly unethical. Russ himself then comes out talking about this Lambo, and this is where he said, no, I owned this from my other business. This I did not buy from SAITAMA. Has nothing to do with SAITAMA. I didn't sell to buy this. I already had it because I already had this money. She came out and talked about this, quote, new whip that they have. And look at the year. It is a 2022 Chevy Tahoe just purchased, fully loaded, which is shortly just before the failed November 13th event. Since it's just before the failed November 13th event, this means that it was, if they sold SAITAMA tokens, they were at the point of the highest possible price. And if they dumped off tokens, they were one of the contributors to the major dump that we saw based on the token sales. When you look at the dates and you look at these photos, it starts to become clear kind of what likely happened here, which is that both of them, both cult leader and Christina, they were enjoying the rich life based on token sales. In their mind, we're selling tokens that we had. And there's nothing in their mind wrong with doing so. This conglomerate of, subcult that I'm talking about, in their mind, no, you shouldn't sell your tokens because it harms investors. Regardless of how I feel about them dumping off the project while people are harmed, because I've already spoken to it at length, the point is, I believed that both of them were living up the rich life off the backs of investor money if they had major bags that they dumped off the project. I believe that. That doesn't mean that they did anything that was, quote, wrong. Unethical? Probably. Wrong? I don't see it. I do think there were some lies because I remember, again, Russ, cult leader, saying, no, I had this Lambo before I ever got in SAITAMA. Turns out they started this whole SAITAMA thing off basically being broke. They were near broke or at broke. Here's where it gets sketchy, and here's why I have a problem and why I think it's a form of confirmation bias in what's going on. Christina now comes out, and she, for whatever reason, aligns with this conglomerate, a subcult of so-called, quote, haters, and tells them what they want to hear. Tells them that he's out apparently he cheated on her with a buddy, that they did a threesome and all this drama that's irrelevant, and I'll get to that in a second, and that he is currently in Jamaica and didn't want to go to Dubai, out there doing extracurricular things with this other lady in Jamaica, using money that was, again, coming from SAITAMA. Now, again, if it was not drained directly from the liquidity, and I don't see evidence that it was, and they simply dumped off tokens, nothing, quote, wrong with this. The whole thing about a mistress and somebody else and all that other is irrelevant. But what it did on the call, somebody asked her the question. I don't know who asked it, but somebody asked her the question, and I'll paraphrase. In your opinion, stress, in your opinion, do you think SAITAMA is a scam? This person asked that, and it was a lady. And she said, Christina said, yes. This other guy, who I don't know who it was, might have been, I don't know who it was. I don't want to put a name. Somebody was a guy. Said, quote, there you have it. SAITAMA's a scam. That's not a conclusion. That's confirmation bias. What she said was, because what she was asked was, smartly so, in her opinion, it is a scam. Here's why I have a problem and why you must make a distinction in confirmation bias and understanding it. It's fine that she has an opinion that it's a scam. The bottom line is you don't really have evidence of a thing. Number two, she was right there with him, partying and celebrating and showing off all this stuff, and I called out, you guys are kind of tone deaf in what you're flashing and flaunting. And she was perfectly fine living the good life when it enriched her, and only came out when it no longer financially benefited her, which makes her conversation suspect. This is not about gender. This is about she can say in her opinion it's a scam. You cannot draw that as a conclusion. That is confirmation bias of this subcult who wanted to hear somebody, quote, on the inside saying it's a scam. You still don't have that. You have basically an individual who is right on the inside with it, who is right enriched, which makes her less credible, frankly, saying that in her opinion, it's a scam. You have not any evidence that it is or isn't. She sent a bunch of photos saying there's stuff that he told you that wasn't the truth, and I'm just sharing this because of whatever fell out between them, right? So she talked about the degree, and apparently at some point he had stated he has a, quote, master's in finance. She shares that he has a UOP degree. It's a Bachelor of Science in Business. Is it a problem that he lied? Absolutely. Does it matter? Yes, in the fact that he is no longer credible because he misrepresented his education. Here's where I think it's kind of stupid. He should have never talked about master's degree in finance. It didn't matter because you do take finance-related courses in business school. UOP is a credible school. It is regarded, it's had its issues, but it is regarded. It's regulatory, it's covered. It is one of the good schools. If he really wanted to cheat people or lie to people, he could have gone to a diploma mill and just simply posted Masters of Finance that he bought from whatever the F. He didn't do that. He actually went to a school that is a legitimate school that does have a legitimate degree, that does have financial classes. It's just that he inflated what he said, which makes him less credible because he inflated what he said. He should have never done that. She trying to expose this lie, I think is sketchy because she knew that all along and didn't say anything about it until now when it's no longer enriching her, which makes her less credible in my mind. UOP is an accredited college. It's actually one of the better colleges in terms of accreditation now that they fixed the issues. Nothing wrong with UOP. There's nothing wrong with the degree. The issue is that he lied about the degree, but I question her because she could have said something prior to now, in my opinion anyway. So then she talked about this extracurricular activities and using the money and doing all this stuff, talking about the stuff going up the nose. Again, Cocaine is not something that you would just randomly start, in what I understand from people. You don't just randomly start a thing. There had to be something along the path. And so chances are, if there was such abuse, it was already part of him, which means she would have had to know it. However, she's just now exposing it, which makes her questionable. This is the normal course. Like if this were testimony, that's what you would do. You're trying to understand, why didn't you bring this before? Why didn't you say something before? And you only say something now when you are scorned of some kind and you're upset and frustrated, but that's confirmation bias. This subcult they're hearing things that they wanted to hear. Yep, we knew all along he was ripping people off, and now we're hearing the quote ex-wife drop the dime and drop the dirt, when the truth is she has not produced anything that is of any evidence of anything other than the high probability of what we already knew to be the truth, which is that chances are the both of them dumped major bags to fund a rich life cycle style. We knew that that was likely the case from the photos she shared, though. So I'm saying confirmation bias is when you are so convinced of a thing that once somebody comes along and says something of that same, you just kind of roll with it as it must be true. Let me caveat as I close. I am not suggesting anything positive about the cult leader at all, because I still maintain he is the root cause of why the project's in the crapper. I'm saying I also don't agree that you should blindly follow what this lady says, because she is coming as an angle after she's scorned, despite multiple points of evidence where she herself shared that she was getting enriched and she was rolling right along with it. And she only said something now when she's pissed off about what happened. She was the one celebrating that they just bought land. She was the one celebrating the rich life cycle. She was the one talking about all the great stuff. She was the one talking about the millions they lost when it started dumping after the event. However, again, a lot of the stuff she was sharing was just before the failed November Vegas event. As in this truck, November 4th, 2021, just about 9 days prior to the failed event, which means that this was purchased right at the all-time high. And because of the year, that means they just bought it. And by her own admission, they were broke prior to SAITAMA. You can connect the dots from there. Going strictly off the data she shared, the strong probability here is that they both had a stake in it. They both were taking and dumping tokens. Under no circumstance we can see was there anything, quote, stolen from the project. Because again, as the devs, as the managers, as the people behind the project, they are entitled to hold whatever bag they choose. You as an investor had to make a choice whether you buy in anyway. And if you've heard me for any period of time, I said you have to see if they're doing what they told you. Bottom line, that's all that really matters. Are they doing what they told you? If you bought into SAITAMA back in May or whatever, 2021, when the thing launched, and you were taking profits all the way up to prior to November, you got enriched because they didn't have anything that stopped you because everything was locked down. You got enriched. After the fact, when they're going to a V2, they had access to the liquidity. If they were going to cheat you, they could have taken the liquidity straight out of there. They didn't. You got to ask the question, what does that mean? And be objective about it. It's not just that this lady's coming out and exposing all this dirt. This subset of people just likes the dirt. They like anything that affirms what they believe to be the truth. That is confirmation bias. I am not absolving cult leader of anything. I'm saying that both of them are ultimate trash because of what they were doing for people. They were out there flossing their life cycle style in everybody's face. That's what they were doing, both of them. That makes her less credible. That makes him less credible. And we don't even know if this whole thing is just okie doke, where they're actually working together to fool the cult. So if you believe in SAITAMA, by all means, I'm not telling you what to do with your money. If you think SAITAMA's toast, by all means, I'm not telling you what to do with your money. I'll tell you this much, though. All the people who are scrambling to cover this as some breaking news story, time will tell whether or not there's anything comes of it. I will say that whatever cult leader chooses to do with whatever money, however legally obtained, And even if that means he dumped major bags, which harmed other people, if he owned those tokens in his wallet, legit, there's nothing, quote, wrong with what has been done. Them flossing it in your face, and this is my chew out for some of you, them flossing it in your face for months on months, and you sticking around as part of the cult, the Russ We Trust cult, despite the two of them flossing this crap in your face, is more an indictment on the cult narrative than on those two, because they already told you what they were about. She told you what she was about. He told you what he was about. You have nobody to blame but yourself if you completely ignored what they were doing and what they were putting in front of you. And this is simply the fallout where scorned woman comes out and exposes something the large majority of is irrelevant. And it's, in some cases, can get her in major trouble. Because if you put out things like she did in written form, that's a form of libel. You can be sued for that, especially if you have no evidence of it and you're just theorizing. She has a bunch of text messages. Text messages are not evidence. You'd have to have photos of somebody in the state of a thing. Maybe she does because they were apparently, swingers or something. Maybe she does. I'm just saying none of it matters in the context of you as an investor or potential investor for SAITAMA. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, she was right there alongside him, happily alongside him, partying alongside him, celebrating and smiling alongside him. She was right there at the failed November 13th event. So if she's going to claim that the thing is a scam, that means she knew it was a scam and she rolled with the scam willingly, which means she cannot be trusted. She is not credible and she should be taken at face value. You can make your claims all you care to. Investors have to make their own decision. This is no better reflected than in the current chart. The current chart did not completely crap out. There are people still in it for two reasons. One, grown-ass adults don't sit on Telescam or Twitter. So they wouldn't see this space. They don't see what's going on, and they have no idea. But two, most importantly, I believe there's some people that really say what I'm saying, which is she's just as sketchy as he is, if anything else, and there's nobody you can really trust. And at the end of the day, does the price go up? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. I'm not telling you what to do with your money either. I'm not. I cannot. I'm just sharing confirmation bias is a very serious problem. And it's important for you as somebody, individual investor, to speak your own mind of what you think. It's not about anybody else telling you, yep, it's a scam, deep, deep. You got to make up your own mind. Don't judge based on these subcult people telling you what is or isn't a scam. Assess the data that you see, all of it. Consider the source of the information. That's even more critical. Consider the past of the people sharing the information. Beyond that, it's nothing more than an investment. And as an investment, it's going to go up or it's going to go down. And make your own decision as it pertains to your investment, your portfolio. If you feel like this drama is too much smoke and you can't deal with that crap, you can get out. That's perfectly acceptable. Or you're one of those that says, she's just as shady as he is. I might as well stay in it and let him explain it. That's fine too. Or you don't care about the drama and you're going to stay in it, or you're going to drop it, or you're not going to care. All of those are viable, actionable things. Just make sure, no matter what, you're not letting this cult, subcult, tell you what is or is not a scam. Simply because a woman scorned makes a claim that it's her opinion that something is a scam, when said woman, who is now scorned but was not scorned, was perfectly happy to sit and roll in her, quote, new whip just prior to the failed November 13th event where the price crapped and never recovered. I personally find that sketchy myself, and means everything that she says is in question, just like everything he says. That's my opinion. Make up your own mind.